Welcome to this year's International Women's Day panel event. We call it Embracing Equity in Fintech. It is great to have so many of you join us today. We saw Bangalore there. Last year, our Breaking the Bias in Fintech event was such a success that we have decided to run 2 sessions today, so as to be mindful of your time and so that more of you could join us and take part from wherever you are in the world. In this first session for the APAC and EMEA regions, I am delighted to welcome our panel of female leaders from the banking and fintech space, some from our own customer base and some who have worked at Finastra and gone on to fantastic achievements. Before we go on to hear their insights on this year's theme, I wanted to spend just a moment on what International Women's Day and Embrace Equity means for us at Finastra. Now, for those of you who've been with Finastra for some time or who are friends of Finastra, you will already know that International Women's Day is an important day in our calendar. Last International Women's Day, we pledged our commitment to reaching a 50-50 gender split in our ELT, and I'm proud to say that we have already achieved this milestone well ahead of our target of the year 2030. The ELT and I will be leading by example and working to ensure that this same equity is cascaded throughout the rest of our organization and embedded into the DNA of Finastra. We will also continue our commitment to being open by default. Now, what does that mean? It means that we pave the way in improving equity and economic prosperity for all, creating a financial services ecosystem that is open, inclusive, fair, and equitable. And it means as an organization, we create a culture that we are proud of. We are open-minded, we see and act through a lens of inclusivity, and we live out our core values so that we can deliver on our purpose of doing well by doing good. Now, Finastra, as you know, has recently won the Vista CEO Award for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, as well as Environmental, Social and Governance. So we should all be proud of how far we've come. It's a testament of how we are truly leading the charge within the Vista portfolio, living and breathing our open by default mantra, making real and clear impact. Now, on to today's celebrations. Our Women at Finastra Employee Resource Group have been working in tandem with Sarita and the DE&I team to bring today's event to you with a focus on 3 calls to action. Number 1, embrace personal growth. Number 2, embrace allyship. And number 3, embrace lifting up. Just as I mentioned that the ELT and I will lead the way in driving gender representation through the organization, lifting up as we rise, I'll invite you to listen to today's session, reflect on these 3 calls to action, and consider the role that you will play in helping us drive gender equity in Finastra, FinTech, and beyond. And with that, allow me to pass it over now to our moderator for today, Visam Kuri, to start the conversation with our panelists. So Visam, over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for setting the scene. Thank you for your focus on DE&I and for your support for all our ERGs. And just before I kick off the panel, the IWD team of Finastra has prepared a very short video that I would like to share with you, and then we can kickstart our panel. So let's move to our video.
Having people you can look up to is important, not just from a male-female perspective. It's important that you know that there are others that are out there that have been able to achieve something that gives you that inspiration or extra encouragement to go push yourself, go be what you want to be.
Provide mentoring opportunities. I think young women will benefit greatly from role models who could help guide and support them in their careers.
We have to amplify their voices, and you can do that by speaking up to address challenges, but also to share their successes and accomplishments, especially in rooms where they aren't there. So provide a platform and opportunities for these individuals to shine their light bright and showcase their skills and competencies for themselves.
Being an ally doesn't mean you know everything, so do not be afraid to ask questions. Actually, most people will actually welcome you asking questions and willing to listen and understand. So that would be the number 1 piece of advice.
research shows that gender equality will only become attainable once men jump into the traditionally female sphere of domestic labor at the same pace as women have jumped into the workplace.
Knowledge management, knowledge of your industry, knowledge of your customer base, knowledge of their services, their products, and the ecosystem within which they operate.
A critical skill that I encourage women in fintech to acquire is data analysis. It is critical to developing innovative solutions and making informed risk and reward decisions.
Welcome back again, and thank you for the team who has prepared this video. So I would like to start by welcoming our panelists and all of you for our first of the two sessions under the title of Embracing Equity in FinTech. My name is Wissam Khoure, and I am not only the Executive Vice President of our Treasury and Capital Markets business at Finastra, but also, very proudly, I'm the co-executive sponsor of Women at Finastra Employee Resource Group. International Women's Day is the main event for our team each year. And I have been really looking forward to celebrate this day with all of you, our panelists and the attendees, who I am sure the panelists will have lots to offer of valuable insights and perspectives on the theme of Embrace Equity, as well as our three key messages for the IWD at Finastra, which are Embrace Personal Growth, Embrace Allyship, and Embrace Lifting Up. I would also like to extend a very special welcome to all of you who are joining us from outside Finastra today. After the success of last year's event, we knew that we wanted to continue this conversation and open the discussion up to a larger banking and fintech community. Obviously, I would also like to welcome our Finastra employees who are joining us either from Locus office watch parties or from their home offices. Please note that we will have time at the end of this session for Q&A. So we encourage you all to drop any questions you might have in the Q&A chat during the discussion during this session. So let's get started. We have very exciting panelists, and I would like to ask each of them to introduce themselves and describe their career journey, specifically through the lens of resiliency and managing change. Talking about managing change in the fintech industry, that's the only constant that we have. And in this year particularly, we have seen lots of disruptors. And I know our panelists had to adapt to this change in order to improve their careers. So I would like each of you to introduce yourself, and let's start with Jillian.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, thank you for having me here today to celebrate International Women's Day. And thank you for everyone for taking the time out to join the conversations with us to embrace equity. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Gillian Lamella. I started my career in technology at a very young age of 14 years old. I started programming and doing graphical design, so animation at that age. So for me, like learning all the engineering skill sets at an early age probably helped to accelerate certain parts of my career. So at the very beginning of my career, and I'm a computer scientist by background, studying graphic arts. I started my career as a web developer at Lehman Brothers. From there, about like 6 months in or so, I started managing a team very young. I've been a manager since, and for me, I went into multiple roles, a tech BA role, a strategy role from there. And then I really went during the financial crisis into an accelerated role where I worked on just helping to kind of segregate multiple systems in the Lehman estate. Really complex, and we can get into that later. But for me, during the financial crisis in particular, I was very junior person in my team. I'm maybe like 3 years into my career. And I learned quite a lot at an early stage, which included adapting to change and things, reorgs, bankruptcies in particular. So I learned really early how to adapt to change around me. For me, it's brought a lot of opportunities. Following the financial crisis, I was asked to relocate to the UK. work on the global tech strategy, and I did that for a couple of years. And then I moved on to different opportunities like working on CCAR, and then becoming an engineering delivery lead, working on cloud acceleration. So my current role right now is executive director at JP Morgan, where I focus on shaping the public cloud migrations for hundreds of applications. And I'm responsible for the roadmap and the strategy, amongst other responsibilities I have within the space, including agile transformation. So for me, really pleased to be here. We'll talk a little bit more about, some opportunities and some advice that we have across this brilliant panel that everyone's put together here. So yeah, I'll just pass it off to Iris next. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you, Jillian. Hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Iris Black. I came to tech much later than Jillian, and started my career as a lawyer in Germany, as a daughter of a lawyer. So it was a bit a natural choice for me to study law, and in German that's a long endeavor to get your bar exam. And then when I started, the dream came true. I started my career in one of the big law firms, working for banks, which was always my favorite industry. I very soon realized that the job profile of a lawyer actually didn't match my character, and making contracts watertight absolutely wasn't my passion. And so I quickly thought about a career change, and thought that the people who were actually working in the banks and who I as a lawyer was working for had a job that was much more interesting than my job. And so I changed my career. I applied at a consulting firm, Boston Consulting Group, because already quite early I understood that everyone, even the top managers that I was at that time admiring, everyone was just a product of the things they learned. And I basically picked my next role always according to the proposed learning opportunity. So what the job could teach me became the key driver of why I would go for a job or not. So after having done a couple of years in consulting, traveling every week to different places in Europe, working with many clients in many banks, I got married, settled down, and liked the job of managing change and big projects, joined a bank in-house, and became a program manager, ran one of Deutsche Bank's biggest programs, and started having my first kid at that time. And after the project was done, I got an interesting call, and here my entry into the tech world began. And I was asked to join an American bank that wanted to set foot in Germany. And with my regulatory profile, I would be a good deputy general manager for the middle and back office sides of compliance and risk and everything. And my experience in the bank license application process. So the bank was Silicon Valley Bank, that many of you may have heard of. And it was basically my start into the fintech industry. So we built up the bank to a profitable business. And that's when I realized that really building up organization was my actual passion. And I founded my own company in 2021, became a Finastra client in 2021, and am now building a B2B neobank in Germany, with an amazing team of two other founders, another woman and another man. So this is me handing over to Gulnara for her story.
Hello everyone, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Gulnara Aguiar and I'm the CEO and founder of Ormex. Fintech is part of my DNA. I'm a global head of capital markets post-trade solutions at Finastra. I'm very happy to be here for this reason as well. I'm an R&D product manager for capital markets. I have built my expertise in exchange-traded derivatives, commodities, risk hedging models for clearing houses, working for these biggest fintech companies as Calypso Technology, now Adenza, and Finastra, of course. And at some point, I have decided to change and devote all my knowledge and expertise to the real life sector, which is agriculture. And this is how Ormex was born back into 2020. But it was not such an easy way to go. And it was a challenge. And I had to find lots of courage in myself, say to myself, okay, what's missing? What should I do? How can I do that? So we can definitely speak about it later. So today, Ormex is a multi-awarded company in Europe, in Asia, and in America. It's a digital voluntary carbon marketplace and registry that helps corporates to offset a part of their Scope 3 emissions that they cannot reduce by allowing them to finance sustainable and regenerative agricultural practices. This is me. I'm also a mom of 3 children, and I live in Paris, and my office is at Station F, which is the biggest and well-known incubator in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gulnara. Let's pass on to our last panelist, Rufaida, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Wissam, for having us. Such an amazing group of accomplished women. Really feeling honored to be part of that. So, welcome to everybody on the line. My name is Rufaida Banubai. I am head of payments South Africa for Standard Bank, which is probably the largest banking group in Africa. So I bring a very unique African story to you, and I hope that it resonates. And because I think the lessons are so similar across geographical lines, notwithstanding cultural differences as well. So a little bit about me. Stalwart in banking, having traversed corporate, retail, and investment banking, a long-standing history with Finastra, because the majority of my journey has been in payments. Very passionate about payments, and also very passionate about payments as a mechanism in emerging economies to transform and create greater inclusion, and that's become a huge, meaningful purpose statement for me as we start to chart the emerging economy journey to how we can bring payments to more people. On a personal note, I'm a mom of 3. I have lived the South African special story. I grew up in apartheid South Africa. I was not just a woman in business, but I was also a minority woman in business in a world that now is transforming, but has not yet reached its optimal target state in terms of transformation. So I've lived the journey and soldiered through. I'd like to say there was a lot of resilience at the heart of it, because it was not an easy path to chart, and the end in sight was not always clear. So very keen to share that story and those journeys today, and any help I can give to other aspiring and emerging leaders on the line.
Thank you very much, Rufaida, and thank you for all our panelists. Your achievements talk by itself, and what you have achieved as leaders in your industry is really impressive, and I think you're going to provide lots of interesting discussion for our audience today. So let me start to discuss the first topic, which is the theme for International Women's Day, which is Embrace Equity. I would like just to take a bit to discuss the difference between equity and equality. Equality is really focused on making sure that everyone, all people, are given the same opportunities and same resources. But in equity, it is to recognize that people start from different places. So we really need to ensure that each person gets a very specific resources and opportunities that they need to succeed. The other way to look at it, if equality is the end game, equity is the path to reach equality. And talking about your careers, talking about all the changes that have happened, all the disruptions, starting with Lehman Brothers all the way in 2008, all the way to all the changes here. And looking at the pandemic, I could say we're just now beginning to understand the long-term impacts of the pandemic on our own lives, in particular on women and their careers. And some people characterize this as a female recession. Specifically, some studies show that men were more likely to report positive impacts on their careers from remote working, while women were more likely to feel burnt out and isolated, as the boundaries between work and personal life have become much, much more blurred. So I would like to open that discussion and start with Gulnara and ask the question, what lessons should we take away from the pandemic about the support that female employees require in an equitable workplace?
Thank you, Wissam. So first of all, I guess the first lesson that we can have is alone in our corner and to be part of a group. And if you can be part of a woman group, it's even worthwhile, more worthwhile. Why? Because actually there is this support and this openness of discussions that we can have between women that sometimes that we can't have with men. And that's really important. And in my case, I opened Ormex during the pandemic. It was March, and it was 8th of March, 2020. So 3 years. Woo, very happy for that. And I started by joining an incubator, which was of JP Morgan. So Gillian, it was a great incubator for different women, and I guess it's in all parts of the world. I joined the one in France, in Paris, and it's a women incubator to encourage women to create their own companies and be an entrepreneur. And even though I have done already my executive MBA at INSEAD just before the pandemics, I still found this opportunity very useful because this gave me the structure and this helped me to explore other ideas and to actually discuss them with other women and to put the company in place. So definitely, if you can, please do so and join any groups that you can have, and not to the company, as this can be external. And also, on my side, what I have done is that definitely create and tour yourself with advisors and mentors, and that's really important. I have a group of 5 advisors in my company. It's not that these people will come to you, so you definitely need to go out of your comfort zone and ask these people and the people you admire to help and to support you. But this is possible, and most of people do it with great excitement and encouragement.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Gulnara, for your input. And yes, I agree, you are not alone. And being part of a wider group, support group, can obviously help. And very impressive, you chose when to open your company in March 2020. So change is built in from day one. So excellent. I would like to pass on some feedback from you, Dr. Iris, on the same topic, please.
Sure, very happy to. So I think there are a couple of components to it, right? So what happened at least in Europe during pandemic is probably the 2 big changes on 2 levels. So first, doing a lot of things remotely started to be okay. So I was still at Silicon Valley Bank at that time, and I was traveling, although I had a very small second child at that time, to London for 3 days every second week. And no one thought that my job would be possible without that regular travel. Suddenly, March 2020, when Gulnara opened up her company, people realized it wasn't necessary for me to travel at all. So also in September 2021, we raised €3.5 million venture capital without having met any of the investors in person before. Yeah. So there's a lot of freedom in your business life. So I'm absolutely not surprised that men say a lot of things got a bit easier for them. At the same time, with a lot of schools, kindergartens, nurseries closing, the amount of work at home just sometimes doubled, if not quadrupled. Yeah. And depending on how well someone or the household management was working before, afterwards it often got worse, let's say. And if the woman was the one who was mostly carrying the load, then it got worse for her as well, as Wissam rightfully said. So there, and I've been always a big supporter of having home support, because I see my job as my day job, my job, and very fortunately, this returns enough to be able to pay other people to do things that I don't have time to do. And so for me, the consequence of the additional work at home was to increase the support level that we already had and really delegate to other people the things that I didn't find important enough to do myself. And I think this is an advice that I can also give to any woman who wants an ambitious career. You can't do it all, and you can't do it all to the level of perfection that we women all sometimes strive towards. And some things have to be delegated and be done maybe a little bit less perfect than we would have done it if we've done it ourselves. But this gives us the freedom to focus on the things that are really important. And so we made our way through that time well, and I'm very glad that many of the good things that the pandemic showed us are still here with us today, and reducing a lot of the unnecessary travel that keep people away from their families and reduce their working hours. Yeah? So giving it back to Wissam.
Thank you very much, Iris. And just between the two feedback that we got from you, then I have my doubt that this female recession phrase is truly applicable. I think you've both done very great achievement during this period. So that's very inspiring. So let us move to the three topics that we want, key messages we focus on at Finastra today. And the one is embracing lifting up. We all hear all the time about the importance of mentoring. And Gulnara, you've mentioned it as well as part of the support. But many early career females have very hard time to develop that relationship with more senior executives, especially when in our industry, it's quite common knowledge that people develop skills by frequently changing jobs or companies. So I'm going to draw, since we're talking about mentoring, I'm going to start my question with you, Rufaida. You have recently joined the Women in Payments EMEA Advisory Board. You are also a mentor in the South African market, and you are on the Women in Payments Canada Mentor Program. So, and you have done amazing achievements. And I think this is a great opportunity for you to give an advice for our younger women employees who are looking for mentorship in this field. What advice can you give them?
Yeah, great question. And I suppose when I wanted to answer it initially, I was going to say I was very privileged in my career to have had the benefit of mentoring, sponsorship, coaching, and championship. And then I realized actually I wasn't privileged to have it. Yes, there was a privilege. I was very lucky to have secured that. But I think I unknowingly, carefully curated that sort of Rufaida Inc. advisory board. And my first lesson to you is even if you're transitioning companies, career paths, you want to create your own enduring advisory board. Some may stay in it, some may, you may evolve from, outgrow, but you want to look at your core advisory board and start to curate that now, early in your careers. And yes, it's difficult, which requires you as the mentee, the recipient of these relationships, to start to think about strategically and not in a crude way and not in a way that imposes on other people's time, but where they can get something out of that engagement as well. So I suppose in summary, what I'm saying is you should always at some point in your career have for your counsel, at least a mentor and a sponsor. Now, what are the differences? So nobody there is your therapist, and I think that's the first thing. And nobody there is your coffee mate, and I think that people struggle with that. And I struggle with it as a mentor because I find sometimes networking sort of deeply embeds itself as a must-do thing for young people. They must be networked and they must network. And what that actually means for them is I must be seen with the right people or have a relationship with them. And that means I must have coffee with them every now and then. I disagree. For me, when I engage with a mentee, I have such respect for someone who brings something to me. It's didactic. It's a shared experience. Someone who's coming in a mentorship context, a bit more tactically, saying, this is my day job. These are my leadership challenges. Help me understand what are the skills and the skill sets I need to grow, to transition through these and to improve? Or, how can you guide me in the right way to find the tool sets outside of my day job to achieve those? That's how I see mentorship. Even then, you have to come with a very clear objectives of what you want out of a mentorship. it's quite disappointing as a mentor when you're sitting with somebody who, yes, they could be at a crossroads in their career, or they're struggling with certain cultural aspects of their environment, or leaders, and you want to help with that. But you can't be the person helping them make the decisions. You can give them the guidance, help them find the tool sets. And then you move to sponsorship. And sponsorship, for me, is a little more transactional in terms of the environment that you're in. So if you're in a large corporate, Finastra, first you've got a great program running, you want to find a sponsor maybe within this program, you want to find a sponsor as in your executive vertical. Old school hierarchies, unfortunately, do work. And who is that person, maybe, and call it way up the line. I don't really believe in hierarchies, but in meritocracies work better for me. But in traditional organizations, that's what you're going to get. Who is that person, either your leader or your leader's leader, or somebody who has influence on your trajectory? And this is how I see sponsors. So somebody who has your an insight into your skill set, your ability, your capabilities, and thinks you can do more, and is going to constantly help you understand the trajectories that are available to you and help you path that. And that requires careful consideration of who that is. It's not always one person. I don't believe in putting your eggs in one basket, but it is often someone, pretty close to you up the line that you need to start thinking about. Let this person understand where I want to get to, either content-wise in a strategic context within the working environment, or career pathing-wise in terms of how you want to grow and where you want to get to. Championship, on the other hand, is unique for me. I always had a champion in my old environment. I changed jobs last year after 16 years. Word of advice to everybody out there, and I know young people don't have this problem. Don't stay 16 years in the same job, much as you love the organization. That's the special individual that you connect with, that gets you, that can help you understand the culture, the temperament of a place, that can help you identify what are the critical things within the environment. Programs like this, other programs, where do you put your hand up? There's always that person who's a subtle influencer in an organization, sort of bordering on the informal. And I would say you need to seek that out. And as always, these things are never an exact science. It's always a nice hybrid of everything and what works for you and where you have the time to fit it all in. So over to you, Wissam.
Thank you very much, Rufaida, for your insights. And I love how you distinguish between the different roles. Obviously, not the psychiatrist one, but the mentoring, the sponsorship, the championship, the coaching. And I think this is quite impressive. And I like what you have said as well about the role of the mentee, not only the mentor, and also the both way learnings, mentee, mentor, and mentor, mentee. So this is quite impressive. I would like to pass on about the experience that we have on the same topic, please. Especially from Gillian's point of view, what experience have you had in your career, either one of the 4 roles or different roles that have truly helped you, and you can share that advice with the audience?
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with everything that Rufaida said around the building that advisory board. I love the fact that you've actually articulated as an advisory board, because it's very true. There's constant board members changing in throughout your career as you level up and as you gain more experience and build your career trajectory. The one piece of advice I would give to folks just listening on the call is, to stop creating their own glass ceilings as they're growing the career. And then the other piece to that is also to take a look at your growth. I know it might be common for us to take a look and maybe compare to our peers, but your experience in your career is your experience. So I would say that make sure that you're, kind of building your objectives, building your own goals, and taking a look back at what you've achieved, where your development areas are. And then if you keep doing that iteratively, you'll see your own progression. And using the tools such as mentors and coaches and networking and building out sponsors, they are important to building out that trajectory, because from a mentor perspective, this is somebody who is going to be sharing their knowledge, sharing their experiences. You may not have the experience just yet, but these folks are going to be investing their time to helping you enhance your development, your growth. So you definitely want to be, kind of conscious of the time that's spent, do your homework as much as you can, as Rafuda was mentioning, and, outline what it is you're trying to get out of it. And also too, like make sure that you're also helping them, maybe you're reverse mentoring your mentor at the same time. So it's a mutual beneficial relationship. With the sponsors, I'm sorry, going back to the mentors, the approach I've taken in terms of mentorship is what I call up, down, and across. So throughout my career, even very junior, I was looking for someone senior that I can learn their experiences from. I would also leverage a peer-to-peer mentoring. So just kind of like learning from folks at the same level as me. Sometimes they might be in the role that I might want to go to next. So then I can learn that transition and learn what a day in a life will look like for the roles that I'm looking at next. And then I would also look down a level as well, a level or two actually throughout my career. And that's where I would tap into reverse mentoring and looking at the generation behind me, because it often does change, right? We talk about millennials, Gen X, Gen Z. It's different ways of thinking, different cultural, different, we're all geared towards achieving the same goals, but it's different perspectives. And for me, that's something that's very valuable because, with different experiences and different generations, we'll start to see and develop things maybe that we wouldn't have known. So it's really good in terms of the collaboration and innovation because it will drive better ideas, in some of the projects that you're working on and things that you're trying to solve for. So I think those are the major differences. I would have to agree with, again, what Fruta said around networking as well. And I would like to say that, it's when you're building out your relationships, you do want to also build out, when you're networking, you want to build out your relationships first, right? Make sure there's something mutual there that you can both benefit from. Otherwise, it may not be a good investment in time on both sides, right? So, and when it comes to mentors, just don't lean on your sole mentor, right? To what Rafuda was saying, they're not the ones who are going to make decisions for you. You're going to be ultimately making decisions for your career. Be accountable whether the output is good, positive, negative, but you're going to lean on people that, again, will give you advice. Just keep in mind that advice might be based on their experience, the way they do things, their personality. So just take that into consideration. Just because, a mentor maybe gave you certain advice, that can kind of contrast to what your skill sets are, for instance, maybe your goals are. So just keep that in mind. It is a guidance, right? And I think the other thing that I would mention around mentors and really tapping in and growing is this is something that I've not heard too much on a forum, but try to also co-mentor yourself. So if you're in a situation and if someone else came to you with this problem, how would you approach it? I think that's often a telling experience on how you should probably approach the problem that you're in. So kind of take those kind of tools and approaches. I think that might help. And then in regards to, we were talking about switching roles, internal mobility. I actually have been in a company for quite some time where I did that. So previous to my role at JP Morgan, I was in Lehman Brothers for 3 years. I was in, not 16, but I think I had 14 years at Barclays. So I did various international relocations. And for me, I was changing my job, my roles maybe every year or two. To kind of make sure that I was going into tech BA strategy, different complex programs and problems, and different skills across tech and business. So I think it is good to get the diversity. So if you do stay within your area, and I would still have to agree with Rafuda on getting the diversity of different companies because you have different cultures there. But if you are in the same company or you stay, for whatever reason you want to stay, make sure that you're constantly evolving is what I would say.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Gillian, for your insight. And that it's an excellent segue to the second or third topic we want to discuss today, which is embrace personal growth. Since you've mentioned about you need to have a support group around you, be it Rufida Inc. or be it any type of support or organization you build around you. It's about you eventually, how you're going to grow. So looking at personal growth, we often hear the example that men will apply for jobs which they can meet only a portion of the requirements for that job. while on the other hand, women will only feel comfortable for applying for jobs where they meet all the requirements. This speaks to what we call the imposter syndrome that many women experience, which is the belief that they are not up to the task. But it also demonstrates a very important part of what you have just discussed about personal and professional growth. Why would somebody take a job that they already know how to do? That's against growth. Growth includes developing skills by applying for jobs that are a bit outside of your comfort zone. And that also poses a question for us as managers. Do we need to look at the potential of employees only from the angle of what they have already done? Or shouldn't we also look at it from the potential and the capacity that they can achieve? So not breaking the line of thinking, and since we started with you, Gillian, can you tell us about a time in your career where you have either applied for a position yourself that is driven by personal growth, or an experience where you hired a team member, took a bet on that team member, hired because of potential, and what happened based on these decisions?
All right, I actually have an example for both. So I'll just start because I think majority might be earlier in the career. So I'll start with that example. The opportunity at Lehman Brothers was actually to hire something like 5 to 8 year programmer in web development. I just graduated, so my experience was homework effectively since I was 14. So it wasn't really an active role. I had 1 year, I think, experience as an internship at Panasonic, where I did database programming, but I didn't meet the job spec. So just to be clear, I was very hesitant in applying for the role. However, I did achieve the role. I beat candidates that probably, more than qualified on the spec. But I was selected to join the team. And then a couple of months later, I was asked to manage the team. So I think that's a perfect example early in my career where, I didn't meet the job spec and I was hesitant, but I went for it anyway, and it resulted in the career trajectory that I had. In regards to building out teams, I often, will look at the individual career pathways or development plan, current skill sets, and look at their growth, right? So if somebody is an engineer, for example, and wants to move into product, I actually have somebody in my team who's done that. I look at, trying to match their current to their future state in terms of career development and roles, and help build them towards that level. So the example I have is someone that was a software engineer on cloud, so AWS, showed interest, and at the very beginning of the conversation, she was telling me, she's like, I don't think I'm quite ready for product. I think that's 1 or 2 years away for me. And I said, actually, you have all the foundational skills. You have the technical knowledge around cloud. We're running cloud. I'm building our product delivery team. Join me now as I'm shaping the team rather than 2 or 3 years later where you could be part of the transformation. So that's an example. And, again, I had done it myself. I've gone from engineering to delivery, so I know it's possible. So I was just very transparent with the individual, and she's doing a fantastic job. She's been agility leader, scrum master for the past year, and she's been doing really well.
Perfect. Thank you. We should take this as an example. Knowing that we just have 13 minutes, I'm going to jump to the last topic of today, which is embrace allyship. There's a Harvard Business Review article that recently concluded that many men claim to support gender inclusion and equity, but at the same time struggle to see gender discrimination and harassment in their day-to-day work. This is referred to lack of situational awareness, or the ability to see the gender dynamics and intersectionalities at play in the workplace. So I'm going to ask the question to all of you, starting with Iris, then Rufaida, then Gulnara, and Gillian, if you want to wrap up after this discussion. What do you really suggest to men who want to improve their ability to read the room or understand more the workplace and that is experienced differently by the female colleagues? And in some cases, if you have examples on how you call attention to these people in a way to educate them rather than just simply shaming them. So let's start with you, Iris, Dr. Iris.
Yeah, thank you. I think you have to differentiate a bit because I think it's different for, let's say, younger male colleagues than for leaders. I think a phenomenon that you sometimes have with younger colleagues is that, let's say, the change the trajectory from college to workplace when it comes to communication is sometimes not complete before they start the first job. So especially when there is a group of colleagues that go along together well, whether there are other pretty or not women in the room, yeah, sometimes there is some juvenile behavior that is not professional and that I can only encourage to be ended in the workplace. Sure. And that's often it's not meant in a bad way, but it's just not professional behavior. And I think this distinction of I'm calling out on a pretty colleague, and people don't even realize, because in college it was totally fine and people were even happy about it, but no one wants to be called out pretty in the workplace. It's just not part of what your professional appearance is supposed to be. And I think so this distinction for younger people is sometimes a bit difficult, and I can if you are a friend to a colleague and can call that out in a way that is not shameful, this is probably something I would encourage. And on the leadership side, it's very closely correlated to what you said or what you guys discussed earlier. So women sometimes get the job done in a different way than men, and the skills and the ways and perspectives are often different. If male leaders look out for the same qualities and criteria that made them successful, they are maybe not as likely to promote effective, successful female leaders as if they would look from different perspectives and see how this woman may get to the same result or even get to a better result just in a different way. And I think this is the key change of perspective that I'm sometimes still lacking. So I recently was talking to a 70-something very accomplished, one of the most influential chairmen of the supervisory boards in Germany, and I was asking, so what are the supervisory boards of today are looking for in women leadership? He was like, you have to have at least 30-40 years of experience. It's like, okay, I understand how experience made you successful, but I'm not sure if the 40 years of experience, how everything worked 20 years ago, is going to make the company with a fast-changing environment successful in today's world, or if not, someone with a deep tech background like Jillian, for example, who may not have 40 years of experience, but just 20, is probably the much better fit for the role because she has a much deeper tech experience and skills in a cloud environment that the company needs much more dearly than someone who knows 40 years to how to read a P&L. And so, it's just an example, and he was a very nice guy, but it's just the perspectives are still sometimes a bit too conservative. And I think if you broaden that perspective and walk a mile in someone else's, in another leader's shoes, and see the different perspective, I think this is beneficial to promote more women.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iris. I can totally relate to what you have just said. And like we started, this is a difference between equality and equity. You need to take into account the other individual. And I always say there's always unconscious biasness that we have to to observe. I always give this example. I don't know about different cultures, but at least in my culture, I was grown up by this phrase, like, if you have to be nice to other people, treat people like you want to be treated, which actually goes against any type of inclusion. You need to treat people like they want to be treated, not like how you want to be treated. So
very true.
Unconscious biasness that lives with us. But talking about the allyship and talking about mentoring, if I want just to pass on to Rufaida to give us a bit of your experience in that area and how you can solidify your allyship. And then we'll have 7 minutes to go through the Q&A, if you don't mind, after I get the closing from Gulnara and the closing from our Chief People Officer, Helen. So on to you, Rufaida.
Thanks, Wissam. I'll try to be brief. So kudos to you for taking all the flack for men in the room, but I feel like it's not that binary. So I absolutely agree with Iris, and there's the good examples that she's highlighted. But it's easy to think that men just don't get it. And I like to think that everybody wants to be the best person they can be, particularly in corporate environments or the work environments that we operate in. But it does happen that there is unconscious bias, and call that culture, call that, personal grooming in terms of the environments you come from. They have shaped who individuals are and how they show up. Now, you're probably living under a rock if you don't have the sensitivities to hardcore discrimination and harassment. That dog whistle at a woman type of blatant harassment. I think those things are inexcusable. So when you deal with pure discrimination, pure harassment, you got to deal with it firmly and head on. I'm more interested in the subtleties. I'm more interested in, like I say, it's not binary, it's not just gender, men and women. It's far more an inclusiveness around minorities. So for me, what's quite important when I chair, in a boardroom, I want to make sure that I have appealed to the minority groups in the room, because I grew up in a corporate environment where I didn't form part of the golfing fraternities. I certainly wasn't involved in the hunting expeditions as well, but I had to still path away and find how I could connect into those worlds. It was hard, but obviously I must have done some things right because I managed to overcome those. For me, what's important now and the concerns that we face on a daily basis is, how do you assess intent when those subtle or unconscious biases show up? And how do you decide whether you're going to deal with it head on, or it needs to be dealt with head on, or it's something that you can, and I'm not saying harmonize or normalize, but you can tackle in a constructive way. So let me give you an example. And we're all talking about female recessions with the pandemic and all the pandemic lessons. I'm talking pandemic humor or post-pandemic humor. There's a lot of people, I changed jobs partly through the pandemic, so it's hybrid working. And I worked in the industry, chairing a whole host of initiatives. So a lot of people saw me on camera and now are meeting me in person. And the first thing they say is, wow, I expected you would be taller. I'm 5 foot. I come from a line of South Asian women who are 5 foot. So I'm not sure how to tackle that. What I tend to do is say, I'm exactly 5 foot. That hasn't changed in 48 years. And my grandmother was the same and my mother was the same. And therein, I give the message, but I'm not dealing with it in a very sort of woke, confrontational, combative way. And I've also sort of set the tone in the room around, it's okay. I get your intent, probably harmless. Let's move on. So that's kind of how I'm learning to deal with it. But every day is an experience. And I said to the panelists a couple of days ago, I have a 22-year-old at uni. Trust me, nothing you can say does not reflect an unconscious bias in their minds. So thank you. I hope that helps.
That helped a lot. Thank you very much, Rufaida. And looking at that, we just have a few minutes. We started a bit late. I suggest that I move to Susan for the Q&A. We're starting with the questions with Gulnara so that you can reply to the question and give us your closing remarks if possible. So I just want to hand over to Susan. And I want to thank you all before doing that for a great, great discussion. It has been my utmost pleasure and honor to host you today as your moderator. And on behalf of all the people who have attended, I want to thank you for your insights, advice, and perspectives that, again, talk for themselves with very, very successful career achievement that you have made. So thank you again. And Susan, on to you for the Q&A. We cannot hear you, Susan. You're still on mute. I know the watch party behind you is noisy, but would love to hear your voice.
Oh, I think I was talking.
Susan, you're back on mute. Now you're on mute. Now we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Welcome to Finastra in London. I'm Suzanne McLaughlin. I'm the Global Programme Manager for Women at Finastra. And I'm just going to ask a couple of questions because we are sort of running quite late on time. So the first one really was sort of sent earlier on, but I just wondered if you could maybe outline what your tips would be for managing sort of your personal and professional work lives. I mean, you've all talked about family commitments. I'm going to go to Gulnara. Can't hear Gulnara.
You just need to unmute. Yeah.
Do you hear me?
Yes, Gulnara, go ahead.
So on my side, I've got 2 children while I was at Calypso Technology working, and it went really well. And I had my 3rd child just one year ago. So what I can say is that, well, actually, we women can manage several things at a time, and we need to find our own personal combo. For some of them, it can be difficult and it's not appropriate to them. For me, it was my combo to live my personal life and also professional life all together. And it's not easy. I didn't say it's important because this is who I am. And I wanted to mix both environments together. What I can also suggest is also explain them what we do. What is our work about? What do we do? It's so important because this creates also a link with our family, and this also gives them an example of who we are. And so this is my advice. And just to finish with some about what was said previously, I did such great trainings at INSEAD, and there is a new training, especially about men's unconscious bias that that we can see. And I definitely recommend for different corporates to register for this training. Also, I would advise for women to get training on, it's like 360 degrees, more about our confidence and how do we feel, because I wasn't confident at some point, so and I'm still in some situations. It's definitely so important to get this help and better understand who we are, and these trainings definitely help. And just the last word, just believe in yourself. You are not only a role, you are a great person. You have such qualities like creativity, emotional intelligence, reading between the lines that are so important for corporates, understanding your customers' needs. So you are important. So do not pretend to be like a man, just be who you are and expand who you are. Thank you.
Thanks, Gulnara. That's some really important comments there that you made. And unfortunately, we are out of time now for more questions, but I'd like to thank all our speakers today, and especially for their inspirational stories and insight. I'm now going to hand over to Helen Cook, our Chief People Officer, for some closing remarks.
Thanks, Suzanne, and panel. Just a really quick one because I'm conscious of time. But ladies, thank you. Pragmatic, honest, to the point, edgy, and that's exactly how it should be. Make it real. Iris, you said about every job is a learning opportunity. That's exactly how we should look at roles. Not about the role, but look at the learning opportunity, the skills you get. And again, the advice about surrounding yourself with advisors is so fundamental. So as I close quickly, because I'm conscious of your time, open minds. We are open by default. We need open minds. We need those around us to have open minds. One thing I'd encourage us is, as we embrace equity and embrace equality, is we need to get more people involved in the employee representation groups. So please, my challenge to Fenestrans is that we uplift our ERG by at least 20%. As a result of the next 5 days of focus on this. So let's really kind of up the ante. It creates belonging, it creates identity, it creates the advisory group that Rafida talked about. Not just about some of the roles that were spoken about there, but a wider group. If you look in the posts, there's a fantastic book called The Personal Boardroom, which actually just helps complement and supplement the skills you have with those around you who have the ones that you don't have. So, who's your critical friend? Who's your sponsor? Who's your ally? Who's your analytical friend? Think about all those types of things and build that group. And as I think Gillian said, across life, it will change as well. It's a dynamic group. So I will close on saying, the 3 things that are really, really important. Embrace that learning. Lean in, learn, grow. For those who know me, I'm absolutely passionate about growth. And then allyship, and I put this on my LinkedIn comment today, the allies and sponsors I had, mainly who were men, I will add, were brilliant. But actually we need to make sure, and this leads to lift, that we bring the people behind us and below us through. Our job and our legacy as more senior women is to do that and create that role modelling of lift and allyship. So learn, ally and lift, and lean and embrace on all of those things. And actually, as we started and Simon headlined, yes, we win lots of awards, but every woman on this call and many of the men who are fathers of young ladies, living and really being open truly by default is in those everyday little actions, words and environment, the culture which we find ourselves in. That is what truly embracing equality is all about. It's not the big headline stuff. They're great, they're nice outcomes, but it's those little moments in the office on that day when you're having a tough time, on the end of that Zoom call. Those are the moments that matter, and those are the moments that give confidence to people as they go through their career. So think about that. And I thought Wissam, your equality is the end game and equity is the path to reach it. I think that's a really lovely way of positioning it. And I think as we leave, think about that when you set up meetings. Think about that when you're having conversations about, is it really equitable what you're doing? I think to the ladies on the call, fantastic role models, lovely stories, and I'm sure we shall be reaching out to hear more from you. And to all the ladies who are in Finastra on the call, we will be setting up something around the personal boardroom in due course, so watch out, and there'll be some sort of skills and opportunities to kind of lean into that and learn more there. So for Lift and Learn, and I will invite all of our male friends to join us on that personal boardroom thing, because this is about partnership as we move forward. It's not a one woman or a one man game. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you for the IWD group who has done amazing to prepare for this session. And I just want to say happy International Women's Day. And hopefully we'll continue this discussion as we progress. And thank you very much, Simon and Helen, for your interest.
My pleasure. Thank you to all the panelists.
Thanks, guys. Lovely to meet you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.